Hey friends, welcome back to Oopsie Daisy. So there's been like this pattern that's been popping up lately where I have been referencing my own story and telling it again and pointing back to last year when I shared it the first time on the podcast. So I'm going to take this like the Lord's doing something here, and this week's episode is going to be a little bit different. I am throwing it back to last May when I first got on this microphone trembling and terrified and just shared all the dirty details of what I've walked through, from divorce and adultery and drugs to witchcraft and disease, like all the things that the Lord has brought me up and out of, into this amazing story of just redemption and reconciliation and healing. If you haven't heard it yet, please take a listen. It's the basis for this whole podcast, this idea that God can grow daisies from your dirt, just amazing and beautiful things from the mess and the garbage of your life. And if you have heard it, listen again. You guys, I don't know why, but every time I hear it, it just reminds me again of how powerful God is, what he can do, and that nothing is ever too far gone for him to fix, for him to heal, for him to change. I am a living, walking, breathing, sneezing, stumbling example of the miracles God can work and how faithful and how good he is. Take a listen.
Well, welcome to Oopsie Daisy. This is your host for this episode, Chris Hurdler.
AKA
Oopsie Daisy Boy.
No, you're supposed to be Mr. Oopsie Daisy.
Oh, I forgot already. Well, we're excited to be here today. We're going to do a little role reversal. So you are at the right place. This is Oopsie Daisy.
I know people probably thought they clicked on the wrong podcast.
Right. Well, we had such a amazing turnout, if you will, or people asking and kind of hearing my story, that we thought it would be a really cool thing to have Amanda, Oopsie Daisy Girl, share a little bit about her story and through her lens and upbringing and how she kind of became who she is today. And we're really excited to share this part. So
I'm less excited, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, you know, the fire is more on you this time,
right?
Because
my left armpit is sweating really bad, and I honestly, like, before you came down here, I was shaking.
Right.
I was, because I think I'm always in the driver's seat of conversations. And even when I tell my own testimony and my own story, I get to manage that and be in control of that. And so now I'm literally handing it over to you to pull out whatever it is that's going to come out. And I'm like having some feelings.
Take a deep breath.
I am. I'm trying.
No, I'll be honest. It was for me, it was a little easier to probably share my story, and then, you know, hearing from people that have listened to the story. And I think this is an important part, right? Like when we think about our story, and I don't think it's fair just to hear my part of the story. There is a big part of our story, and you need to be a part of that, or you are a part of that, and it's time for you to share. So part of what I was thinking is why don't we just start a little bit about your upbringing? Let us know a little bit about what it was like to be Amanda.
That's like a huge question. My upbringing. Are you talking about like spiritually or just generally? Because there's a lot that my brain is going through right now.
Well, you know, interestingly enough, and I don't think a lot of people know this, is I don't know a lot about your upbringing. Like, much like you were kind of with me, I don't think you knew a lot. You know, I think a lot of people get together and, you know, you start dating and you don't spend a lot of time kind of talking a little bit about what it was like growing up and how you maybe came to find Jesus, or the struggles that led you to want to, you know, have a relationship, or even maybe there were times where you're like, no, I don't know that I want to go down that path. And we all have those kind of stories. And so maybe a good start is maybe talk a little bit about just, you know, maybe what was it like for you growing up and your interactions with going to church as a kid?
Yeah. I was raised Christian. I was raised going to church every Sunday. That was like a non-negotiable in my house. And we did Awana, and my parents volunteered at church, and they were like one of the couples on the team that really planted the church that we had gone to. So, I mean, my parents were very committed to raising us in the faith. Was I as committed to being raised in said faith? No. I think when you're young, it's fun. You go and you play games and you learn things. But when I got to like middle school and high school, I was really against it. And mostly because someone was telling me to do it. And like kind of sums me up in a nutshell. I don't like to be told what I should and should not do. And that just brings up a very rebellious spirit in me. And so my parents really, they did everything right. They really did. I mean, I was at church a lot, and I was connected in youth group. I mean, heck, I played piano for the youth group worship band, but it didn't really sink in, and I was always pushing against it. I remember that. But at the same time of me pushing against it, simply because it was somebody that was telling me to do it, I was also deeply interested in all things supernatural. And like even from a young age, if you talk to my parents, they'll tell you like I used to have demonic dreams. There was like spiritual entities in my dreams. As I got older, I would end up reading books that were like all based around the supernatural, ghosts and demons and angels and all. I just loved all of that stuff from a very young age. But it wasn't until my 30s that I really felt the call of God on my life. I mean, I walked completely away after I left for college, and there was nobody there anymore to tell me that I should go to church. I didn't do that anymore because I was like, oh, I'm free. But I was raised in a very Bible-based, biblically sound church with great teaching. And it wasn't until I came to Christ later that I realized how well I was raised in that, because I had a lot of head knowledge about it. And I knew a lot about the Bible, and I knew a lot of Bible stories. It just took me a real long time to have a relationship with Jesus and actually like give my life to him.
Hold on. We went from you being a kid and going to church and some stubbornness and stuff to your 30s. I'm kind of...
And we're done.
Yeah, I'm stuck.
And I found Jesus, the end.
Right.
Can you tell I'm trying to just not tell all the in-between?
If it were only that easy.
I know. I was hoping to slide that one under the table and just be done.
I gathered that. It kind of threw me off for a second.
I know.
So tell us a little bit about what you were like when you were a kid.
The word that first comes to my head is nerd.
Well, there are a few pictures, family photos I've seen of you hanging on the wall that are pretty epic.
Except right now, I think I have the same haircut that I did back then too.
Minus the turtleneck and the grin.
I love a good turtleneck. No, what was I like as a kid? I was very, I would say, independent. I was a loner. I didn't ever need to carry a lot of friends around me and with me. I was really happy reading. I got grounded a lot just for probably being mouthy and lying, and those are my big ones.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but
no, for real. I was a tale teller. I really was, and that is also known as lying, and I did get in trouble for that a lot when I was a kid. But I would get grounded, and I would secretly be so pumped to be grounded, especially in the summer, because I didn't care to go outside. It was really hot. I just wanted to sit in my room and read my books all day. And so I would just read Little House on the Prairie and all those things. And then my mom found out that I was happy to be grounded. So then she started the consequence for some of my behaviors was they would take my library card away.
Goodness gracious.
Does that track with what you know of me now?
Yes. I couldn't imagine the things I've done as a kid if that would have been my grounding. I would have been like, this is easy money.
No, that's just who I was. And I don't know. I think everybody maybe grows up and feels like they're different than everybody else. But I really did feel, I have felt for my whole life that I'm different. You know, I'm a different breed. My brain works different. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was younger, and I think that became a big part of my identity for a while, and I really leaned into that idea that I was different and my brain worked differently. But no, I've never really been one of those people that's like in the middle of a crowd of friends or hanging out with all the popular kids and, I was very inward. I don't want to say introverted because I've discovered that I'm quite the extrovert and I absolutely love to be around people. But I think as a kid, I was just very inner focused. I was very nerdy. I was into books. I rewrote The Wizard of Oz and changed the story when I was like 7, and it was like 100 notebook pages. I mean, I was reading and I was writing novels, and I was just in my room living in my head,
So you've naturally, it seems like you've always had that kind of the gift of gab, if you will.
Some would not say it's a gift,
gift
or a curse.
Well, it seems like there was some benefits from that.
Yeah, but if you think about it, though, like when you're growing up, and I truly did not become extroverted until I would say in my 30s and even like late 30s, within the last couple years even. I've really decided and discovered who I really am and what I enjoy, and that is people and talking with people. So you have this kid who's very inward, withdrawn maybe, very introverted, doesn't carry a lot of friends, but is full of words and ideas and thoughts. And so all of those lived in my head. And it became a very busy place to be, not always the most comfortable place to be. And I still tell you that now. Like, if you could spend a day in my head, you would probably see why I'm pretty tired. It's a busy place up there.
Right. I can agree with that.
Were you going to say I can see that?
I can see that as well.
Because you're the unwilling recipient a lot of my word vomit.
Sometimes I just smile and nod my head. So tell me a little bit about, did any of that personality, did you struggle with that after high school or going into college, or was it just something that that's always just been something that you've done?
For me, it was always easier to hang out with guys. I always felt a little bit threatened with female friendships, and I think that there was a level of vulnerability there that I either didn't know how to do or wasn't really willing to do. And I mean, I had good friends. I had good friends in high school. It got real messed up in college, though. I just tended to spend more time with men, and that led me in high school. I always had a boyfriend. I was always dating somebody or on my way to date somebody, and that continued into college, where I really just sought after relationships with men and really kind of pushed women away. And in college, like the females that I did hang out with, and even into like our 20s when we first got together, a lot of my female relationships were based around alcohol. They were my party friends. And I think I was using that as a way to open up, to get out of my head and out of myself and feel comfortable being myself and taking my mask down a little bit with these females. But I mean, you're not your real self when you're drinking either. So I just spent a lot of time numbing my own thoughts in my own head. I spent a lot of time in really rocky relationships with men, and that led me to spiral really bad in college. Like, not a lot of people know this, and a lot of people are surprised by this, but I failed out of college. It took me almost 7 years to graduate from college. I should have been a doctor at this point, but...
Yeah, that's interesting, having known you for almost 20 years and how smart you are and how you have your hands in everything and how you can legitimately talk your way out of a lot of things, and you write so well, and you are like playing Jeopardy with you is just infuriating. It drives me nuts. I mean, I can't even get who is or what is before you've already had it. And so yeah, that's interesting to hear. Do you feel like a lot of that was seeking validation?
I think it was validation and acceptance, because I didn't know how to live in my own skin, and I didn't know how to live with my own brain. And so it was like, if other people were okay with me, then I could be okay with me. But it was real dangerous for me to be alone, because I didn't have a sounding board to bounce anything off of. And I think that's why the male relationships worked for me well, because, if you heard our previous episode, you heard me kind of say that I could manipulate people into believing that I was who they needed to be and everything they wanted. And so I would take on... This sounds like kind of a serious mental disorder. Maybe I did have one, but I would take on characteristics of the person that I was dating or that I was around that would make them love me and be happy with me. And when they loved me, I felt okay.
Was that because you didn't naturally, maybe on the outside, you would show people that you loved yourself, but pull back the layer of onions. Or they talk about pulling back the layer, and underneath all of that, you didn't truly love yourself?
Oh, no. No, I was a disaster on the inside. I doubted everything I did. I doubted myself as a person. I had no idea who I was. It got me into some self-harm stuff in college. I remember cutting in college. Yeah, I was drunk one night and I was really mad, and I punched a hole through a mirror and used a glass to cut myself, and was just really struggling. And I didn't know how to tell anybody that I was really struggling. And maybe even at that point, I didn't know if I cared that I was struggling. Right. I was doing everything that felt good to me in hopes that I would feel good, like permanently, that I would be okay and that I would be happy. And it wasn't working.
Whatever it takes to fill the void.
Yep, that's what I was doing, 100%.
And I suppose there's a lot of shame behind that. You know, when you start thinking about how we feel and not want anybody to know, punch a mirror and then you use the mirror to cut yourself, there's probably shame in that. You don't want anybody to know that you even are feeling that way or that you're that low. Yeah.
I don't even think, though, I think the shame came later. I went through a period in my mid to late 20s, where I finally realized like how not okay I was. And at that point, I was in such a deep hole that I couldn't do anything about it. But in the midst of it, I didn't really experience shame about it. I just was so stuck in it. And it was like this tunnel vision that I couldn't even step outside of my head long enough to like name a feeling of like, oh, I'm ashamed of this. I was literally just a loose cannon, just doing whatever, shooting at whatever, being with whoever to feel good. That's what it was about, was feeling good.
We won't even think of the risk versus reward, really, truly. We just want to feel.
Yep.
And so that's part of that self-harm, or whether that's men or alcohol or going out, or we don't even care about our grades. Mm-hmm. We'll do whatever we want to do to feel whatever that is.
Yep. And that led me into, I would not go to class in college. And sometimes it was like maybe I wasn't even out partying the night before, but I just would wake up and feel like I don't want to go to class today. And there was nobody to tell me why that was a good idea to go to class. And so I didn't go. And then I failed out.
Right.
And ended up having to go to 2 other schools to finish everything up. And it took me 7 years.
During any of that college years, are you wavering at all with going to church, or what was your relationship with God at that point?
No, there was
non-existent.
Nothing. There was nothing. And it's funny because I can look back and I can see God's hand in my life during that time. Like, he had placed people around me at every kind of new season and transition and phase in my life. There's always been just one person who was like kind of a representative of him. Somebody that would be like, hey, I'm going to church. Do you want to come with me? Or, hey, I'm going to Bible study. And I just would usually push that person away and just blow it out of the water. So yeah, college, early 20s, it was not on my radar at all. The only time I went then was when if I was with my parents before we got married and they were going to go, maybe sometimes I went, or Easter, Christmas. I was done with it.
Right.
There was some guilt deep down about that. I knew that there was, because of the way that I was raised. There was a space inside of me that knew that my place was there. My place was by Jesus, and my place was going to church and having a relationship with him. And so it was like I was actively choosing to turn my back on that. Right. And it was like there was such this deep need to make the life that I chose great and wonderful and worth it. Like the pendulum swung the other way, that I just got so wild about making my own choices, the ones that made my life great, because I didn't want to admit that I was wrong.
Right. So there was maybe even a battle in your head knowing what's right or wrong that a lot of us experience, right? Like, hey, I know I could potentially go to church and start this walk with God and Jesus, but there's also that part of us too on the other end that's kind of pulling us back. Because did you ever feel like that some of it was comfortable, that it felt comfortable to stay in it?
To stay in the nasty?
Yeah, to stay in the nasty?
Yeah.
Did it kind of feel like a warm blankie? Or
Yeah.
We get comfortable kind of in our own misery, right? We can see that door 1 has the options that we want, but door 2 is full of like thorns and all this stuff, but we're going to go knock on that one because it's like, what the heck if I open that and there's something in there that I want and need to fulfill maybe something I'm missing?
Yep, absolutely.
I can resonate with that a lot. That's tough. There's a lot of moments in your college life where you could have just said, I'm done with this, whether it was relationships or school or failing out or, even some of the old mental stuff that you're dealing with. Like, was there a moment or was there some kind of an aha moment that you had that you were like, no, I need to start doing something?
What actually changed everything for me was when you broke your neck. When you broke your neck and I came down and sort of just started living at the hospital with you. And I had lied to my parents that I was like working in a mailroom, stuffing envelopes or licking stamps or something. Like they didn't really know what I was doing. And I'm totally free to say this because they now know the truth. But they had called the university or something. They were like, no, Amanda doesn't work here. She hasn't worked here for 2 months or whatever. And so I remember my dad calling me on the phone, and I was at the hospital with you, and they didn't know that I was in the state. I don't even know how I was getting by. I was probably living in the same clothes and just kind of hiding from my own life, totally engrossed in what was going on with you and your journey of coming back from paralysis. And so my dad said, you get your butt home. And I remember being like, well, crap. This is about to be something big. And so I went home to my parents' house and kind of told them what was going on. They were understandably upset with me, disappointed. At that point, I was supposed to be taking classes and I wasn't. So there was all this wasted money and F's in the grade book and just like dropped classes and withdrawn. And it was a mess. And like I even forged my transcript to try to like tell them that I was doing okay. I literally photoshopped my transcript and sent it to my parents for their insurance.
Wow.
Isn't that awful?
That is,
Yes.
That's how I know your brain is a-moving.
Well,
I wouldn't even put that on my list of 10 things I could have tried to come up with.
I know. At what point, though, if you're caught, do you just tell the truth? But no, I just kept digging a deeper and deeper hole. And so in one day, in one fell swoop, I drove 5 hours to where my apartment was at college, packed up all my worldly belongings, drove 5 hours back home that same day, and moved back in with my parents, which was a huge blessing because they basically told me you're either going to live here and go to school or you're going to live here and work. You can't be doing nothing. And so I had gotten a job at that point and was starting to look at, okay, my grades are awful. What can I do? And I had to go to a junior college for a little while because my GPA was so low that like a regular 4-year university wouldn't take me. So yeah, and my parents really kind of walked me through that. And it was harsh. I was mad at the time about it, and we had a lot of fights about it, but it was good. I needed a parental figure. I needed some people who were like, you're screwing your whole life up.
Right.
And
it sounds like you needed some structure.
Yeah.
Right. You kind of got off the trail here and to your own demise, honestly. The ability to kind of do your things at your own pace or just kind of run. You were running all over the place, so having some structure. That there must have been maybe some comfort, or did you feel defeat in that?
In having to move back home?
Yeah, because I mean, you think about it. At this point, you're like, what, 21? Newly 21?
Yes.
And you think about society now. It's like you go to school and you graduate college. And did this kind of put fuel to the fire of how you were feeling about yourself, or did you feel defeated, or was it? No,
you know what it did actually? It made me mad. It made me mad that I was in this situation where I was back under my parents' thumb again, or so I felt. I didn't recognize that it was a good thing for me, but it made me mad. And the thing about me is when I would get mad, I would get motivated. And so at that point, then I decided, well, if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to show them that I'm not an idiot. I'm going to show everybody that, whatever. And so when I started taking classes then at a 4-year college to become a teacher, I went from having not even be able to get in because my GPA was so low I had a 4.0 the rest of my college career. I had perfect grades the whole time. And it was like, where was this? So yeah, I got mad, I got motivated, and I got it done.
You are still somebody who can use a situation where you feel angry or hurt, and you can use it as motivation. I've always been impressed by that, because there's a lot of people, even with the addicts I work with, they can use a poor situation. You can use a poor situation, and you can kind of just continue to add it on the layers of, this is just my life, this is how it's always going to be. We can justify, when's the next shoe going to drop? And yet, one of the things I've noticed about you in the 19 or 20 years is that you can use it as motivation. That's one of the things is you can get down, or you can get kicked and go down, but the nice thing is you don't stay down long.
No, I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter by nature. And I think that has helped me a lot, but it's hurt me very deeply in my relationships and in myself, because I fight with myself a lot about decisions, even about what I wanted to do with my life. I felt like the world had so many options for me, and I was so scared to make the wrong decision about, like, what do I major in? What do I want to do for a job? Is this guy with the broken neck and the weird limp, is this the guy I want to be with or not? That just was so terrifying to me, that I was always at war within my own head, within myself, or with somebody else. And so, yeah, that fighting spirit, when harnessed correctly, is great. But it was real damaging when I was younger.
Yeah, circling back to, what the heck were you thinking?
When?
Why did you stay with me? That, seriously, it doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. It was funny, though, because before you broke your neck, I had told my roommate at the time, I had just gotten out of a relationship that was awful. And I had been dating this guy on and off for a couple years, and he had cheated on me and whatever. It was just not good. He was not the person for me at all. And I remember breaking up with him and then saying to my roommate, the next guy I date is the guy I'm going to marry. And she was like, what? And I
so
was
the
like,
guy that jumps in the lake, you're like, no way.
I don't know.
I got this guy in a wheelchair who can't walk. And
no.
now I'm potentially, this is the guy.
No, but I think your accident and helping you recover and helping you get into school and pushing you gave me a purpose. And that purpose kept me on a path. I was really wandering because I had no sense of purpose before. And that gave me a purpose. And so, like I said in our previous episodes together, I doubted a lot whether or not we were supposed to be together. And there was all that pressure of staying together after you broke your neck and, living everybody else's fairy tale. But it was giving me a purpose.
Right. That's a good word for it. It did feel like there was a lot of pressure. How could Amanda and Chris go through that and not stay together? It's the perfect love story.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, from what I've shared before and what you're sharing, we both had our wildly strong insecurities about relationships and life and what we bring. And we're both, I think, naturally people that want to take care of people who are, I don't want to say wounded, but people that are dealing with stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of wild that we came together that way. So you talk about purpose, right? One of the big purposes was helping me. And so, I get home and I start being able to move. You're going to school. You're still doing your stuff. But tell me, how did it feel for you when I was starting to be able to do things on my own again and I didn't need you as much?
There was that period of we did everything together because you needed me to do things with you and you needed that push. And so that gave me purpose to try to, help you define your path for life as I was helping push you towards something that kept me accountable on my journey towards something too. And we were both working for something together. But at the 2-year mark, when you went to the neurologist again and he just said, this is it. The healing that you've had up to this point is all you're ever going to get. You don't have physical therapy appointments anymore. You don't have occupational therapy. You just get to go live your life as is now. And looking back, that's really where a lot of the ick started for me. A lot of the questions, a lot of the wondering, a lot of the fear that I had made these choices and was kind of strapped with this person. We had gone through this traumatic, like, oh my gosh, he's never going to walk again. He's never going to have kids again, to like helping you do life again. Then like your broken neck took a back seat in the relationship. That used to be what everything was about. And then it just truly became a man and a woman in a relationship together. And that's when a lot of my doubts started. And I was like, holy cow, we've gone 2 years of this. I've been with this guy for 2 years. We've shared things and lived through things that most people don't in a lifetime. And now there's a lot of pressure. Not very many people said it to us, maybe. I think we internalized a lot of pressure from people. But there was this unspoken expectation that this love story was going to continue. And I just really got in my head and started doubting. And I felt really stuck. I felt stuck and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to talk to. And I also didn't know if I was strong enough to be the villain in the story. Like, had I left you at that point, like, you're all fixed up, Limpy McLimperton, but you're doing your thing. You know, you're living your life. If I would have turned around and walked away from you then, I would have forever gone down in history as this villain who left this guy that broke his neck, and I just left him. And I thought about that, and I was like, I don't think I can live that narrative. So I just went forward with it. We got engaged, and we were planning a wedding, and then next thing you know, we're married, and we have a couple kids, and I was still full of doubt and still full of darkness.
I must have just been wearing fog-colored glasses because I didn't know you felt that way at all.
I know.
I would have never guessed that maybe you were unsure. But, I mean, the more we've talked about it over the years, it makes sense. I mean, I think I've told you this privately. I'm like, if the roles would have been reversed, I wouldn't have stuck around.
Well, and I think it helps that you're just a really stand-up guy, and we were good friends. Like, we did have a good friendship. Like, you're fun to be around, you're fun to talk to, but I got it in my head that after we had gotten married and having kids, that there was a love piece or a romantic piece, a sexual piece that was missing, and that whole friendship, this like kind of power couple portrayal that we had, wasn't enough for me. Right.
I think that's the facade that it looked. I mean, because of our story, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's just like, that's an amazing story. There's no way that they won't work out.
Right.
But behind closed doors, there was a lot of things that many people didn't know about.
No, I was absolutely abusing alcohol early on in our marriage, and when the kids were little, I would come home from work and I would pour a drink. That was the first thing I would do, is pour a glass of wine. And it started off as just kind of like a habit. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't need to do it, but then the habit became something that was like had a hold of me, to the point where, I know you had been working nights at the time, and you would come home and there would be like a drink spilled all over the bed because I had passed out with it in my hand. I'd passed out with it in my hand and spilled it everywhere. And I said the cat knocked it down or whatever. But I was really deep into numbing myself again, deep into this weird alcohol cycle.
Right. I was working a night shift, you were working a morning shift. We were doing what we had to do to survive, right? So I'd get the kids up, bring them to daycare, you'd pick them up in the afternoon, you'd get them to bed, and then I'd get home. And I think that's where a lot of people can relate. It was like there wasn't a lot of connection, and I had no idea. No. Like, so unsuspecting that you were drinking. You'd be, hey, can you just grab me a bottle of wine or whatever it was. Like, oh, it's not a big deal. She works hard, and she's going to take a bath, and she's going to just relax and unwind. It was never one of those where I was like, I didn't think this was a problem at all.
Yeah.
I really didn't. And again, maybe this is just me being a stupid guy, because I was like, I think everything's great.
Yeah.
Although I knew not everything was great, but I never thought that you were so hurt or alone or isolated or lacking love or compassion, because we didn't really talk about it.
Well, and if I would try to bring it up, you are the type of person that you personalize everything. And so I didn't have any space to tell you, hey, like, objectively, I'm feeling like I'm suffocating over here. I don't know what's going on. I'm struggling with alcohol, because I think at that point in our relationship and where you were in your emotional state, you would have immediately took that personally and said, I'm screwing up in some way. I'm not enough for her. What did I do wrong? And I couldn't have that conversation one more time with you. I couldn't listen to you be like, I'll do better, I'll do better. I'm like, I'm not looking for that. I just need somebody to hear me. And I need somebody to really like step in and help me.
Right.
And I think after our second daughter was born then, and I did deal with some postpartum stuff. I had real bad postpartum anxiety. I had postpartum depression. I had this weird like psychotic anger. And I remember like being on the floor of our living room, like screaming and crying, and you were finally like, hey, you need some help. And I remember you were thinking about that in terms of postpartum only, but I remember that hearing those words for me were like, I need some help really bad. Like there's so much. And at that point, it was like a big tangled ball of yarn. You know what I mean?
Right.
I had my own past that I was trying to deal with to figure out who I was, what I wanted, what I felt. I had this relationship with you, this super complicated marriage and backstory. And then we added 2 young kids on top of it, throw in an alcohol abuse issue. I mean, I just was a whole ball of tangled string that I could not pick apart and figure out.
Right. And regardless of what we tried, I don't think either of us were equipped to be in a marriage where let's be honest, we hardly knew each other.
No.
I mean, it was you taking care of me and me trying to, take care of you in my own weird way. Gifts of affirmation or
do everything
because I thought that's what you needed. And I think that's really what some of the downfall within that was, is we just, I know people are going to be shocked by saying that we did not communicate well, right?
No.
We just didn't. It was, we were just kind of 2 ships passing in the night to try to make sure that you would do your job, I would do my job, and that was kind of the...
Well, and I think my lack of female relationships at that point was really what led me down this awful road to an affair. It really was, because here I am saddled with this doubt about this person, feeling stuck. At that point, I had convinced myself that I had made an awful mistake, that I should not have been in this marriage at all.
Okay.
And so I did not have close friends that I could say that to. It was like you and I had isolated ourselves in our marriage, and that you were the only one I could talk to, and I could never say those things to you. And so I did what I had always done, was lean into male companionship that started off as just these open conversations, that I was able to openly say some of this stuff that I was feeling and that I was thinking in a very non-judgmental space. But, when you're hurting emotionally, you're distant in your marriage, you throw in alcohol, and things spiral. And I remember seeking out that escape from this problem and my family, as in like the 2 of us and our kids, escaping those responsibilities and always running to another guy.
Right. So during that, I think naturally people would be like, well, that must have felt one way or the other. How did that feel? Was it freeing? Was it kind of like I get to be someone different for a little bit? I don't have to worry about being a mom. I don't have to be married. It's kind of this freeing wild child part of you that came out.
So that's really scary, because you hit the nail on the head. It was like I felt like the old me again. And granted, the old me was not healthy at all, but it was a me that I was comfortable with. And it was a me that didn't have all these responsibilities, that didn't have to be a mom, that didn't have to sit there and struggle and scrape up against somebody else and living with somebody else that I just like could not click with anymore, no matter what we did. And so, yeah, it was very freeing. It was surprisingly easy. I'm going to damn myself here a little bit, but it was surprisingly easy to lie. And I think that's because of who I was as a person. Like I said, I was always a tale teller. And so I was a gifted storyteller, which made it, easy for me to come up with stories. But you were also such a trusting and open heart that you just took it. And so I would just create these stories that were very plausible, and you went with them. And
I never questioned. I
Nope.
would have had never I had no idea.
No. And so, like, all these nights of, like, oh, I'm going to book club with the girls, and if I have too much wine, I'm going to sleep on somebody's couch. Like, seems like a plausible thing, right? And it got way too easy to lie. Like, looking back, I'm so ashamed at how easy it was. And here's where, like, sin just takes you. And this is the really scary part. I look back, and I remember at the beginning that I felt guilty. At the beginning of, like, starting this relationship and having an affair and cheating, I did feel guilty. But very, very quickly, the benefits that I got from it outweighed that guilt. And I became so hard-hearted that I didn't even feel guilty anymore. It was more like, I'm doing something that makes me happy. This is making me a better person. We can live together now. I'm a better mom to my kids. Like, all these lies I was telling myself. If I wouldn't have gotten caught, who knows how long we would have lived that way, because I was totally comfortable doing it and had zero issue with it, which is so scary, and it sounds awful, doesn't it?
That is, I mean, hearing you say it
I know.
is a different level of
How do you feel hearing
acceptance.
me say that?
Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm
because
sorry.
Well, no, I had no idea how long you did it. And as we're talking here, I actually have no idea how long. I've never sat you down and like, you need to tell me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like the level or the time is the important piece.
Yeah.
So did some of that, the affair part, was there a lot of resentment towards me because of maybe my neck injury and my lack of compassion, or, you know, with some of my physical ailments with my ED and stuff? Was there just some resentment, or like, what were you thinking about?
So here's where it gets all twisted. I think in my head, oh, this is going to sound so bad. In my head, you were lower than I was because of how we started. Do you know what I mean? Because I had to caretake for you. And there were so many times that I handheld you through things that I didn't do with a pure heart. Like, I remember thinking you were going to quit college at one point because you had taken all your classes at one campus and you had another class to finish that would have taken you to their second campus. And you were like, I'm just not going to finish because I don't want to go to this new campus. And I remember, like, hand-holding you through that experience. But in the back of my head, I'm like, this moron is so scared to go to a new city and a new classroom that he's going to quit his whole thing. You know, and I just started feeling this ugly pride, this true ugly pride that I knew better than you, that I was better than you, that I just could do it without you, and that I would be better off without you. And it was so screwed up. And that was such a repetitive narrative in my head. And that started to sustain every interaction we had. You'd, like, forget to take out the garbage, or you'd be home late, or you wouldn't put the kids to bed the way that I did. And I remember just, like, reaming you for little stuff because I was constantly looking for you to do things in a way that would tick me off. Or, you know, I would start to expect you to not do what I wanted you to do and not be who I wanted you to be. And so, yeah, I was full of this vicious, ugly pride and this hard stone heart and this weird, like, here I am having an affair and I'm like, oh, I'm way better than he is. What is that?
It puts it in perspective for me.
Yeah.
Just hearing you say that and like circling back to it, because I'm not going to sit and say that your enemy won in our relationship. I was also a huge part of it, you know, and I know this is tough for you because, you know, I can't speak for the affair piece, but I can certainly think back of some of the roles I played in my own insecurities and with you. Yeah. And hearing you say something like, you know, when you were mad, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know what the hell you were mad about. I just knew you were mad, and it was almost like I didn't feel like I was going to win regardless of what I did.
Not at that point.
And so I think if I remember right, Amanda, and you can validate me, I think that's the first time I ever brought up, like, the divorce thing. I'm like, do you want a divorce? Like, what are we doing here? Like, if you're unhappy and I'm unhappy, like, what are we doing? Well,
and that's where my childhood was brought up, because my parents really, like, kind of banged it into our heads, divorce is not an option, because they had gone through their, their own stuff and stayed married and, struggled as married couples do, and really walked out of that. And so that we grew up hearing, like, take the idea of divorce off the table. You know what I mean? Like, you need to lean on God and you need to figure it out with each other. And so the complete absence of God in our relationship was a disaster. I was chasing what felt good with this awful pride. And so by the time we hit marriage counseling, because we were like, well, you were like, you were like, hey, we should probably try to fix this. I had already checked out.
Right.
I was already done. And I remember the therapist took me aside after you left one day, and she looked at me and said, do you want to fix this? And I told her no. I said, I'm done. I'm done. But again, I wasn't willing to be the villain. Even though I was in secret on the side doing my thing and being the absolute villain anyway, even worse, I wasn't willing to finally be the one to be like, this needs to end. Let's get a divorce. I'm done. And so I think what I was trying to I was trying to push you to the point where it was your idea. I think I was trying to manipulate you into saying, I'm divorcing you, we're done. And I was hoping for that. And so when that day came, when I started a different affair with a different guy, and that's the one you had found out about.
That's an interesting story too, is because when I found out about the affair in which I had found out, I didn't know there were two affairs.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I just went off of the first to the second, whatever one. Enlighten us a little bit about that phone call that day. If I remember right, I said, you need to get home, we need to talk.
Yeah. And I knew immediately. That you had found out. And I was really scared on the way home. I remember I was shaking. But I was more scared of how mad you would be and how you would yell at me than I didn't think about, like, my whole world's about to crumble. I didn't think that I wasn't going to be home to tuck my kids in bed at night. I didn't think about any of that. I was more scared of your reaction. But you, always the gentleman, I mean, you yelled at me, but it was still very respectful. You were hurt. We both cried. And then you just said, get your stuff and leave. And so it was I think it would have been harder on me if you would have, like, drawn it out a little more, because I was relieved. When you said leave, I was like, okay, finally, like, this is what I want. And so I packed my stuff up and left. And it began this awful spiral into a lot of darkness. And I ended up moving in with this guy that I had been seeing while I was still married to you. And I could tell, I mean, looking back, you could see that my heart was searching for God. But again, I was still into that supernatural piece. And I didn't know that it was God I was searching for. And so I started to get into like witchcraft practices, learning how to do tarot cards, Ouija boards, seances, magic sigils. I studied a lot of, like, Native American rituals. And I just was, like, hungry for something that would put my life under control and that would make my life make sense. So I was just pulling in all this information, and really, I was a self-professed witch. I mean, that was the joke, not in the circles that you ran in, obviously, because we weren't really friends, but the people that I was spending time with during those dark years, they called me a white witch. And I was always very careful because I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do black magic and I'm not going to do any of this. But, like, I absolutely was deep into the occult. And I experienced things that were very supernatural and very scary. To this day, like, when I came to Jesus, I had to actively repent and go through kind of a sozo and, like, an inner deliverance and an inner healing to really close those doors. Because I was teaching our kids how to do tarot cards. And that's the part that, like, I look back and I'm like, man, for whatever mistakes that I made in my life, my actions and my decisions were absolutely directing the lives of the next generation. I mean, I was teaching my kids how to hear from dark spirits through tarot cards. And people think it's really innocent, and people think, like, oh, it's just an accident. that these cards get flipped for you. This is real. This is real stuff. It's real and it's demonic. And I was involving my children in that. It was really just a dark time. I started doing drugs, smoked a lot of weed. The people that I had been spending time around also dabbled in like prescription pills. I was on Adderall at the time for my ADD, which quickly escalated into testing the waters of, okay, if I take 5 ADD pills, what does that feel like? And so it was just this weird time of darkness and drugs and an exploration that I still fight the shame of today. Like, I know I've been forgiven. I know I have. I know you have forgiven me. I know the Lord has forgiven me and washed me white as snow, and that slate is clean. But man, every now and again it sneaks back up, and it's like, how could you? How could you? How could you? And so now it's like sometimes I'll be talking to our kids about the Bible, and praying with them about a situation they're going through. And there's a voice in the back of my head that says, you're faking this. You're faking this because I know what you did before. You planted that seed first. That's the seed that's going to grow, that dark seed, not this one. And so there's a lot that still comes up in my head, and I have to actively remind myself and stand on the Word of God that He has forgiven me and He has made all things new. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of time for me. And I remember being deeply unhappy. Like I'd committed to this life with this new person. And again, like in college where I was like, I threw myself in that direction, and then I had to do everything in my power to make that direction work out because that's the one I picked. And so as I started to kind of see it crumble, like I could see it. It was like I was outside of my body and I could see it crumbling. He had been cheating on me, and I could just see all of these things kind of coming to pass, but I fought so hard for it because I'm like, this is the life I picked. It has to work out. This is the life I picked.
Yeah, that's what I find interesting, like hearing you share this is like, I didn't know a lot about it. I mean, why would an ex-husband ask what their ex-wife is doing?
Yeah.
But I mean, hearing you say it, it sounds like there was a lot of, maybe you were dealing with some pride. I left this and now I walked into this situation and I don't want anybody to really know.
Yeah, I didn't want to eat crow. Like, I didn't want somebody to look at me and be like, see, I told you this was a bad idea. Right. It was my choice, my life, and I wanted it to work out.
Right.
And it did for a while, quote unquote. Like, I was happy for a little while until all that darkness and slime and the drugs, I mean, they get to you and you start. I remember feeling so restless all the time. And just this deep, it was like my soul was screaming. I could feel that I was super unhappy. And I didn't know what to do about it, You get high and then you just sit and watch TV all day because that's all you're motivated to do. And I just remember craving more and craving different. But I again, had gotten myself so tangled up in a ball of yarn that I didn't know who to talk to and how to fix it and what to do.
Yeah, well, it's not easy to accept the situation that you got yourself in.
Yeah.
Surrender.
That's humility that I did not have. Yeah.
And then ask for help.
Yep.
Because the other thing that we haven't even talked about is you didn't, after the affair and the divorce thing, you were kind of sent out on your own little island. There was not a lot of people left that were on Team Amanda.
No. I mean, fairly. It was fair. I alienated my family. I didn't want to hear what they had to say about how my decisions were wrong and how divorce was not an option. And so I walked away. And I remember, like, my mom texted me on one of my birthdays. And at this point, like, I wasn't speaking to my parents at all. And she had texted me on one of my birthdays. And she said, "Happy birthday. I love you. And God still loves you." And I cried about that because it, like, hit my heart. But then that rebellious spirit came up again, and I was like, here she is preaching God at me, And I'm, like, studying Gnosticism and Buddhism, and again, the pride of going, she has no idea what real spirituality is. But I remember I had alienated everybody. And so, again, I was isolated with this one person. And yeah, just stuck. Really, really stuck. And I think at that point, I started to get sick. I got really sick. And I remember, like, looking back, I lived in a couple houses after we got divorced. But every house I lived in ended up having black mold in it. Isn't that just like such a natural manifestation of like the dark crap that was going on? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
I just was living in these like nasty houses, and I started struggling with my health really bad. And I was throwing up every morning, and I had migraines every day, and I was missing a ton of work.
Yeah, you were miserable.
I was miserable.
And maybe this is part of like, 'cause we always talked through all of this. So I think we shared that we always talked. Maybe it was just surface level stuff for the kids, but really when I started seeing you be sick and missing a lot of work, I would kind of ask you like, what's up, what's going on, and you were hesitant to tell me a lot.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was the one person that was kind of left, that I wasn't always on Team Amanda, but I certainly didn't want anything bad to happen to you.
Yeah.
But I was always like, girl, like, you're missing work. This helps. There's something more going on here.
Well, and I remember it's funny because after about 3 months of being sick, I remember I had seen my mom. I think I had dropped my daughter off at school and that my mom had worked at, and I actually stopped in her room to talk to her. And I remember, I think I cried to her, but I told her, like, I'm really sick. I don't know what's going on. The doctors can't figure it out. And so, like, in that awful experience, there was, like, this moment of, like, my mom and I were kind of talking, and you and I were talking more, and I had started just naturally to kind of treat my body better because I was so sick, and I was, like, so I had stopped smoking marijuana as much, and things just kind of turned a corner a little bit. And in that madness of this illness and struggling, like hopping from doctor to doctor and racking up thousands of dollars of medical debt, things kind of started to right themselves again a little bit, because that's when I started to look to God, because I was scared. I was scared that I had cancer or something that they weren't going to be able to fix. I was terrified. And I remember during that time that I downloaded some Bible app that just gave you one verse a day, just one. And at that point, I treated it like a horoscope, because I would read my horoscope first to find out what the stars had to say about my life.
Because that's important.
At that point, I was hitching my way into that. And so I would take, my magic crystals in my hand and my sage.
Gosh, I remember the crystals.
Yep, and read my tarot cards and read my, horoscope, right, but also read my Bible verse. During that time, too, I remember my brother and sister, somehow we got on a group text together, and it was like, oh, everybody has the same app. What if you guys want to share some thoughts about what you read? And it didn't last long, maybe a few weeks, but it was like at kind of this low point, there was these little bridges being formed. Mm-hmm. As I was cracking wide open, there was connection happening again. And so after 6 months of all this stuff, the doctors finally discovered that I had celiac disease. On my birthday that year, they called me and just said, you have to go gluten-free for the rest of your life. This is it for you. And I was like...
Another bombshell.
Yeah, that was a lot. I'll be honest, I ordered myself a pizza and got every gluten thing for the next 3 days. And just like had my farewell tour to it. But honestly, getting sick like that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it helped me get healthy in my body, first of all. But I really kind of started to wake up to what my life had become. And you know how, like, the Bible says too, like, judge things by their fruit. What's going on around you? What is the situation bringing to your life? Is it love, joy, peace, patience? I was seeing none of those things. I was having, demonic interactions. Our kids would have demonic dreams when they were at my house. And so I really started to recognize the depression and the anxiety and the chaos and the confusion and the pain that was coming from the way I was living. And I really kind of dove deep into God at that point. And I remember starting to take our kids to Wednesday night programming and teaching them some Bible verses. And I wasn't all in for the Lord, but it was more like, oh my gosh, what my way isn't working, maybe this way will work. And so that did start to lead to some sweet times in my house. Like, those are the times that I'm thankful that the girls remember. I don't think I ever told you this, but I prayed over those girls when I moved back in. I prayed that God would take away their memory of those years. I prayed that they wouldn't remember any of that, like of me going outside to get high while they were watching a movie. You know what I mean? Like, I prayed that they wouldn't remember any of that. I've since talked to them about all of this stuff, which is why I can share so freely now, because I know they're going to hear it. But they know all this, and they have told me their great memories of the house that I lived in and how, I did make it fun for them. And so a lot of people are like, oh, that was an awful place to live. But I turn around and say, I really fell in love with my kids there. Like, I never knew how to be a mom, and I never knew how to enjoy my kids without being on a substance. And I learned that when I lived in that moldy little house and was, working my way back to God and trying to figure out who I was. I fell in love with my kids there. Right. And it changed everything. It led up to that night where the person I was living with had asked me, what do you want to do tonight? And the first thing that popped into my head, and I know this was God, even before I knew God spoke to me, the thought popped up that said, I want to find a Saturday night church service. And I said that to him, and he was very against that, and basically kind of in no uncertain terms told me that that's never going to happen. And the next morning, you called and said, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, because we don't take our kids to church, but I'm going to take our kids to church today. Later that day, I had come home. The person that I lived with, everything kind of came to a head, and I ended up asking him to move out and be done. I was done with it. He left so angry, and I hit the floor, and I started sobbing because, again, the life I built, this house of cards that I assembled, crumbled. I was sick. I was trying to heal. I had another broken relationship under my belt. And I remember at that point, I cried out to Jesus. And I just said, this is it. I'm going your way. You're it for me. I'm giving my life to you. This is going to be really hard. And I feel really scared about it. But this is my fork in the road. And I choose Jesus. I looked out my window and there was a cardinal in my tree. And so to this day, when I see a cardinal, I remember that moment of my life. Like, I don't know if you watched The Chosen, in the first episode where Mary Magdalene is like oppressed by demons and whatever, and she gets healed by the Lord, and somebody asks her to explain it, and later on she says, I can't explain it. All I know is that I was one way, and now I'm different. And that's my moment, where I was one way, and then I was different. And from that point on, everything was different. I was all in for God. I was ready to be whole and healthy and healed and do what He had for me. I had no idea what that was going to look like or what He was going to ask me to do. But I remember then you and I kind of getting back together and trying to figure things out. And I was doubting it because we were fighting a lot. And I had a vision. We were fighting on the phone in the morning on the way to work after I had broken up with this other person, and you and I got back together. And I had said to you, this isn't even working. I don't know why we're trying this again. And I hung up on you. And immediately after that, the Lord gave me a vision of us speaking to people together. And He said, I need you to be with this man. You have work to do. And I was like,
yeah, okay.
Yes. And so I remember calling you back and telling you that, and you were like, okay. But then later that same week, and I just kept begging God. I was like, God, okay, God, you got to show me. You got to show me that putting my marriage back together is what we're supposed to do. You have to. I can't trust it right now unless you make it super obvious. And so one night you offered to pray for us as a family before we put the kids to bed. And you grabbed my hand and you started praying. And immediately, I don't know if it was the audible voice of God, but all I can tell you is that there was a voice that filled the room and filled my body and filled my head. And it was so deep and so loud. And all it said was, this man, this life. And my head snapped up and I looked around and I was waiting for you guys to look up at me and ask me what that was, because it sounded like it was in this whole room. And I was like, God, was that you? And he said, yeah, I need you to pick this man and I need you to pick this life. This is what I have for you. And if I wasn't all in at that point, I was all in after that, because you don't hear the audible voice of God and ignore it, So he's pushed me to do so many hard things. He's pushed me to be honest with you about the earlier, affair that I had never told you about. And that first year we got back together, I was in a deep grieving state. The loss of this person that I had lived with for a couple years and who I did love. In my own broken way, I did love this person. And it was hard to let go of that person, because what I had done was I had met my broken self in another body. He had a lot of the same issues, down to the pinky fingernail that I did. We struggled with a lot of the same stuff and we thought the same way. And so it was very comforting for me to find somebody like that. But being with somebody like that doesn't cause you to change. It just causes you to be comfortable in your crap, And so I spent a good first year of us getting back together, mourning, grieving the loss of somebody I cared about, being really terrified about the future, being really scared about what was to come. And it took a full year of me just diving deep into God. I don't even know if I read the Bible as much as I should have, but I just cried out to God every single day and was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I was learning to be real with God. And in turn, I was learning to be real with you and with everybody else. And that's when the real healing started. Was when I wasn't afraid anymore and I wasn't proud anymore, and I had become so broken that I finally couldn't fake it anymore. And there was people, you, others, my family that forgave me, your family that forgave me. There was people that loved me in spite of how broken I was. And that started the healing journey and led us to here where I'm sitting with snot running down my face in my basement office.
Yeah. You cry beautifully.
I
I will say that.
don't know. Everybody's so afraid to fall apart, but it's so necessary, because that's when you get to give the pieces to the one who made the puzzle.
Right.
And he's the one that tells you where each piece goes. And he's the one that polishes the edges and sands the corners so everything fits together well, and that you can have beautiful relationships and be whole and healed as a person.
Right.
And I think that's why I'm on such a mission to share people's stories and share lessons that I've learned, from God and about my life and my relationship with Him. I'm on a mission because it has set me free. It has set my life free. It has set my relationships free. And I so deeply want that for other people.
I'm just proud of you.
Thank you.
I think that was extremely vulnerable. It had to have been difficult.
I'm shaking.
Well, it's the people that listen to the other episodes of my story was a little easier to tell. This is really where the rubber hits the road for you. This is the first time, I think even for me to sit and hear some of the stuff that you've shared, we've never really actually sat down. And so I just want to say I'm extremely proud of you.
Thank you.
You know, that card that I'm looking at in front of me says it's never too late to be exactly who you want to be. And I think that's really when I'm going to think about what you just shared is it's never too late to be exactly who you want to be. And you're someone who's following God. You're an amazing wife. You're an amazing mom, daughter, daughter-in-law, friend. There's so many amazing people that will learn so much from you and will thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Well, all thanks to Jesus who walked us through it, walked me through it, truly never gave up. Like when they talk about how he leaves the 99 to go find the one stray sheep, I truly was running the opposite direction. And for no deserving of my own, he pulled me up and out of it and has blessed me with the most beautiful life. And that's why the podcast is called Oopsie Daisy, is because I have stumbled through my life with all the mistakes and all the missteps and all the errors and all the bad judgments, and I still have somehow miraculously come up with just beautiful daisies, beautiful blessings in my life.
God is good.
Amen to that. And I need a Kleenex, so we gotta cut this podcast off. All right, tune into the next episode. I promise we won't cry as much. Or maybe we will. Who knows? You'll have to find out next time. But truly, thank you for hanging in through, episode 10 and 11 where Chris shared his story, hanging through my story. We really just wanted to share who we are with you.
Right.
I wanted to share my heart behind this podcast and why it's even called Oopsie Daisy. And just we wanted to bring you into the fold and show you who we really are. And so thanks for hanging in. We're really honored.
Thank you.
Talk to you next time.